heard people talking about this problem for years, for decades, but we don't hear enough from people who have to live through it. And what I love about the film is that the true experts, the people who truly understand what it means to cope with the kind of cruelty and abuse and violence, are the ones you hear from. But I also love the film because you can't listen to these men and women talk without realizing that whatever crime they have been accused of, they are more than their crimes. They are not talking to you as criminals. They are talking to you as human beings who have put in a situation that is in and of itself criminal, that in and of itself abusive. And their humanity is what makes us understand that we have a crisis in this nation, that we are dealing with conditions of confinement that are cruel, abusive, and completely intolerable. And I hope the film is seen by a lot of people and that it motivates them to recognize that this film is a mirror about us. It is not just about the people who are at Rikers. It's not just about the people who are in jails or prisons. I think it is absolutely true that you have to judge the character of New York City, its commitment to the rule of law, the quality that it represents, its essence, not by all these big buildings, not by the Broadway shows, not by the academic universities. I think you judge the character of a community not by how it treats its rich and its powerful and its privileged. You judge the character of a community by how it treats the incarcerated, the condemned, the jailed. And I hope people see that what we are doing to people is completely unacceptable and are motivated to do something about it. And so from that perspective, I think it's a really important film. It's a powerful film. It's a film that doesn't just represent Rikers, though. This problem is all over the country. I practice in the state of Alabama. We've got a suit against St. Clair Correctional, which has the highest homicide rate in the nation. We actually have a homicide about every 3 weeks in that system. And we've got to start paying attention. You know, our Constitution, the Eighth Amendment, prohibits cruel and unusual punishment. But it's the constitutional amendment that we have invested the least amount of time, energy, and effort into enforcing. And I think films like Rikers can maybe open our eyes to the need to do something radical to change the way we are dealing with incarcerated people.
Like much of what is going to happen in this country over the next few years, the conversation changed starting on Tuesday, where we have a president-elect who, to the extent that these issues ever came up, just said law and order, period, without much more than that. What does that mean for the conversation about reform, do you think?
Well, I think it means that we've got to be more active, we've got to be more diligent, we've got to pay attention to the narratives that we have in this country. I mean, I really view this election as an indictment of all of us who have stayed silent about inequality, about abuse, about misogyny, about xenophobia, about racism, about all the things that have now been exploited to create power. And so I think it means that we've got to get active, we've got to get vocal. I also think it means we can't lose hope, because the other thing that I'm worried about, I'm hearing a lot of people talking very hopelessly, and I just will tell you that in moments like this, if you become hopeless about what you can do to change the future and direction of this country, you become part of the problem. Hopelessness, I really do believe that. I really believe that. I believe that hopelessness is the enemy of justice. We let these men and women down at Rikers because we've become hopeless about what we can do to people who are struggling with trauma and disease and drug addiction. So we've got to find ways to stay hopeful that we will not let this vote define us over the next 4 years. And there are lots of ways we do it. In the Black community, African American community, we're always struggling against some overwhelming odds, some incredible burden, some incredible challenge. So it's not new for some of us. But I think all of us now have to kind of see that. And I do think that films like this complicate people's ability to just say law and order. It complicates the ability when you actually have to see the cruelty and abuse that we're inflicting on other people behind the politics of fear and anger. And most of the men and women at Rikers are there because not just Donald Trump, we've got plenty of law and order politicians in New York City who've been preaching the same thing for the last 30 years. So I think we've got to be motivated to resist that and fight back against that.
In preparation for this event and some other promotion we're doing of the series, I tried to find out what I could about Donald Trump's record on criminal justice. And there's not a lot there, but the most conspicuous example I came about is, I'm sure all of you remember the Central Park Five, the 5 young African-American men who were wrongly accused and convicted of raping the young woman in Central Park. At the time, Donald Trump took out full-page ads. I think they cost $17,000, maybe $19,000 an ad in the Daily News or the New York Post, calling for those 5 young men to be executed forthwith. So I think we can expect from President Trump and the 3 people he puts on the Supreme Court a hard line on criminal justice and particularly on the death penalty.
Yeah, that's a fair statement. He, in fact, when asked, he did not back away from that. And he's been approached, including by, Raymond Santana, from some of the young men themselves. They've publicly said, we'd like an apology at least for, calling for us to be killed for a crime we didn't commit. When we try to sort of open this door to people and sort of show them what's going on in their name, what have you found, Brian, is the key to getting it done? I mean, I know in some cases there's a fiscal argument that gets put before people that kind of hits home. More so with the leadership, maybe not so much with the taxpayers, although it's about them and their tax dollars.
Well, I do think, as somebody who represents people on death row, people who are in jails or prisons, I'm certainly one of those folks who say we've got to end mass incarceration. We've got to change the culture of punishment in this country by any means necessary. And that means also talking about the economics. And we have gone. We spent $6 billion on jails and prisons in 1980. We spent $80 billion last year. And we are undermining spending for education and health and human services and how we help people who are elderly and how we help people with mental illness, because those dollars are being absorbed by over-incarceration. And so I think that is an argument that we have to use and make. But I do think we also have to make these moral arguments. We've got to make arguments about what it does to a community